Manchester's #1 student station, Shock Radio.
How did you come up with the themes in East is East, like arranged marriage and young people staying in tune with their culture?
I think it was because in my own family, it was because East is East is autobiographical. My dad had a fish and chip shop in Salford, who was married to an English woman. There was 10 of us all together. But for some reason, even though my father married an English woman, he insisted that my older siblings had to marry Pakistani girls. So there was this hypocrisy in the house, and every time one of my brothers decided that he didn't want to get married to a Pakistani girl, my father would throw them out, and the same situation would start again with the next brother. So that was kind of an ongoing thing. And so it was about that kind of hypocrisy I wanted to write about.
The film came out nearly 20 years ago, but it's still quite relevant today and still quite current. So what does that say about the Asian community and how much things have actually changed?
It's strange because the people who pointed their finger at my father and said, this is what happens when you marry outside of the family and you allow your children to grow up in a different culture. And then that was the argument against my dad from his family in Pakistan. Now, many of those relatives also moved over to England, and they're experiencing exactly the same problems as my father had with us and with their own children. The fact is that they've grown up in England, they're educated here, and they want to kind of make their own lives and their own decisions, yet still have fathers who still have a really kind of village mentality. Now, I think the problem with certain elements of the British Asian community is that they still think that they can recuse themselves for taking part in the rest of society. And I think they've kind of taken multiculturalism to the extreme where they think that they don't have to participate. And I think that's one of the problems that young Asians are still fighting against.
Do you think it's still important for British Asians to know their culture and their language? Because it seems like generally young British Asians know less about their culture. So do you think it's important they take responsibility and still know their culture?
I think it's important that they remember where they're from. But I think they also have to remember where they are now and where they're going and reflect on what they're going to say to their own children. I don't think you can dictate what a person's culture should be, especially if that decision was made to go and live in another culture. I think they have the same, maybe they have a more difficult way than their parents had, because having grown up here, in many ways they want to retain some aspects of their culture that they grew up with, but at the same time not having it forced on their own children like their parents did with them. It's a fine balance which I don't think you should allow it to dictate your happiness.
And do you think this balance will come over time, or do you think there'll always still be some kind of issues there?
I think it seems to me from the people I meet that within the British Indian community, it's a lot easier for them. I think it's much more difficult with the Pakistani community. I think Pakistani kids have bigger problems with their parents. I think maybe that has to do much more with the religious aspects of growing up in a Pakistani community as well. But as I say, you get to a point where you have to make a stand if you want to kind of live the life that you want to live. And sometimes that means turning your back on the things you grew up with to create your own life.